Hi, thanks for joining me today. My name is Alexis Chicoine, and I'm here to share some ideas, some thoughts, and some recommendations around the topic of disclosing your disability in the workplace. A lot of the information I've gathered today has been sourced from a document created here by a group actually from B.C. They're called the Disability Alliance of British Columbia. The guide is Disclosing Your Disability, a legal guide for people with disabilities in BC. You can actually find it online free. It's open source information. Really great amount of details in it. While going through some of the recommendations, I'll also share some of my own insights and my journeys when it's been around the job hunt, and hopefully it'll help give you some ideas on when and if to disclose for yourself when you're doing your own job hunt. So, why do I feel I can share some insights? I had a car accident in 2000 that left me quadriplegic. I use a manual wheelchair for mobility, and my hands, my fingers, don't work. But I had already been to university, had a good amount of work experience under my belt by that point. And really, I was an adult. I was living a certain level of life. I was going to movies, grabbing dinner, and traveling. And that's how I saw the rest of my life continuing, just now in a seated position. But this life of disability, for some of us, as we know, costs a little bit. And I didn't have the fallback of ICBC, WCB, or any kind of settlement. It was scary, but I decided to step away from government funding to find employment. I needed to get out there and get back to work, just for me. So 2 years after injury, I was back working full time. I've been working ever since. A couple breaks here and there as jobs came to an end. And I've had some really great experiences, actually. I didn't have the traditional progression of a career of same type of work, but changing from company to company. I've been able to swing my skills and sweet talk, I feel, a number of hiring managers into how I fit their place. And I've gone from a coffee house to a TV station and guiding their retail store there to working in IT, and then now segueing into advising businesses on how to be more inclusive in their workplaces and giving them ideas on their hiring practices. I'm going to go in a little bit more moving forward into how to swing skill set, yeah, that's I feel where my success has been from. So, some legal aspects of disclosing your disability. Employers and employees are under certain legislation. For example, there's B.C. Human Rights Code, duty to accommodate, and others, to provide protection from discrimination and harassment in the workplace. You are not required to tell a potential employer about your disability or health condition if you can do the work required without accommodation and your disability will not pose a danger at your workplace or to others. You do not have to share that information. But where to begin when it comes to your decision on when to disclose? The following tips really do apply for everyone looking for work. 1. Preparation is key. Be prepared for what an employer can ask. There are some traditional questions out there. What is your most challenging situation? What is your weakest point? Those types of things can really be worked on prior to an interview. Learn as much about the employer and the job as possible. Do some research, Google, find about what their vision, what their mission statement is, because you can swing some of their words into your language as you're sharing stories. Back to some legalities. What can an employer truly ask you in a job interview? So during that interview, they can ask about your ability to perform job duties, such as working night shifts, lifting heavy items, or traveling. They do not have the right to ask you about your diagnosis or ask about treatment. The questions must relate to your ability to perform job duties. So they could say, how do you envision yourself lifting that 50 pounds. Now, ideally, lifting 50 pounds in the job is a official task that you have to do on a daily, weekly basis. And if so, then they can ask you to even show them how you do that task. They can't ask about your medicines, your treatment, but they can make sure that you can do the most important job tasks that are needed for the job. If you need an accommodation to do any of the duties in the job description, you must respond honestly. This is my big thing. Set yourself up for success from the start. Don't wait until your job performance is compromised. If the conversation about your disability and accommodation takes place after you accept a job, or your disability gets worse or happens while you're already at work, similar principles apply. An employer is legally entitled to ask questions about functional limitations caused by your disability that relate to your job in hand. They even can know the prognosis, so they can work with you on what that looks moving forward in your position or other positions in the workplace. But to note, the doctor prescribed medical information shared must only be focused on creating the appropriate accommodation. Your privacy is always and must be protected. So, as would be the kind of no-brainer when it comes to a job interview, know your strengths and skills. You are, of course, the person that knows your disability or health condition the most. Will your disability affect your job performance, or will it not be a factor? If needed, be ready for the types of accommodation that work well for you. This way you can briefly and confidently describe those accommodations. An idea around how to talk about that. This will help me be more efficient at my job because these accommodations will allow me to do fill in the blank. Know the funding options that are available to help offset the costs and allow an employer to make and see that it's easy to bring you on. Having these the bits of information in your back pocket, your accommodations, and offsetting funding costs can really open the eyes for an employer and see that it's as I said, an easy fit. Now, point 1. There are some standard interview questions, as I was mentioning: your strengths, your weaknesses, what challenges have crossed your path that you've overcome. What you can do is the personal experiences that you've had over the years can be turned into stories and examples on answering those questions. And it can really highlight the creativity and the problem-solving abilities that many people with disabilities have had to go through that other people have not, and they can be translated to be a benefit to the job specifically and to the workplace overall. Now, to the skill sets. I mentioned that's been my most success for me to be able to move forward and do some really unique jobs that really I enjoyed. Know your skill set and how it fits the job requirements. Not all interviewers are well versed in knowing in what they can and cannot ask you, and they may unknowingly have a misconception that hiring somebody with a disability is difficult or potentially expensive. And if your skills are not the perfect list of that job description, really know how you can explain that and make a fit for it. Particularly if your skill set isn't matching that job description perfectly, that doesn't mean you can't apply. Just know how to sell and market those skills. Example: teamwork, communication, leadership, project management. These are aspects and some skill sets that are transferable across many different industries. So keep that in mind when you're looking at the jobs. And you don't just have to look up I'm an office worker, so I have to look for your traditional office job. That's where I got the IT work. I had a lot of office stuff under my belt. This position was wanting the smarts of somebody who could speak to people of all different levels and the ability to learn their system, their computer system. It was unique to the company. I couldn't know it going in, but I had all of the skill set around the people side of things. And I got the job. It was pretty great. It's strong. Yeah, it was a great job experience for 4.5 years until I actually decided to go and do this and guide businesses and help people around the workplace and hiring aspects for people with disabilities. So, main point of this screen. Being knowledgeable about your disability and the job in question will ensure that you can respond to employer concerns simply and quickly. And by having that information already, in your head, you can feel confident at all times of the interview answering these questions. So, specific recommendations on disclosure. As said in the beginning, you are not required to tell a potential employer about your disability or health condition if you can do the work required without accommodation and in a safe manner for all. In this case, you can share your disability after receiving a job offer or anytime on the job, and that job cannot be taken away from you. You can do the work. What I have found, though, is if you share information, chatting with coworkers at meetings or, lunchtime, it can really be a learning experience for everyone. If your disability is not visible and you need accommodation to do the work, so not visible, mental health issues, dyslexic, ADD, learning disabilities of some sort, if you need an accommodation in that situation, you will be required to disclose at some point. And the recommendation for when to disclose in this case is during the interview. Holding off until after you are hired doesn't create an open, honest experience. And it really can potentially bring up negative feelings for the employer. I truly believe that you need to set yourself up for success. Don't let your job performance suffer until you finally ask for that accommodation. Now, my experience with visible disability has shown me to never leave an employer guessing. This really would be my biggest recommendation for people with visible disabilities, even if you don't require an accommodation. Unfortunately, I mentioned this, bias and misperceptions do occur. Employers will sometimes make bad decisions based on false information. For better or for worse, not everybody knows about disability. And if you show up with funky hands, I don't want them to go away and guess about how they would fit me in their workplace. I want to feed them that information right from the start. So that's off the table. It's not even consideration for them. For me, on a cover letter, I sometimes disclose, but admittedly, I only say I use a manual wheelchair for mobility. I don't want to, in my mind, make them nervous when I say if I were to list quadriplegic. They don't need to know that. They just need to know I use a manual wheelchair for mobility because, I need to get into the workplace. When I disclose on a cover letter, or when I decide, or how do I decide, is based on a couple of things. Size of organization. I have found that it isn't, but it's not always the case, but larger companies have more policies in place and knowledge around hiring people with disabilities. So I'll probably mention my manual wheelchair in those situations, and I do swing it in a very positive light and share a story how in previous workplaces it's been a benefit. If the company is federally regulated, there's federal legislation in place that a certain percentage of a workplace has to contain people with a certain number of people with disabilities. So I'm not applying for positions that I'm not eligible for. I'm thinking about what I can do, what I can fit in, and of course I can do the job. But If I can get a hand up by ticking that person with a disability box, so be it. Why not? For an interview, I have to ask if the location is accessible. I mentioned that. So obviously, no matter what, when it comes to the telephone interview, which is the first stage, I do mention it, that I need to make sure that I can get in the door. Then it comes to the face-to-face. My lack of hand function, is right there, front and center, as soon as somebody puts their hand out to shake my hand. Well, COVID-19 might change that, but moving forward, we'll see how that goes. If I didn't explain how I write or type, as I said, the employer, interviewers could leave the situation and just worry. If they're comparing me with another worker and they don't know how I type, wow, I could definitely lose out in that situation. So I bring my gadgets with me. This is my pen. It hangs on to me instead of it, me hanging on to it. And I can write and take notes and do whatever like anyone else. I have two very similar typers that are on left and right hand. I two-finger type, like whatever, like the 90% of the world, I two-finger type. I let them know that I have a pretty good, decent typing speed. It doesn't affect the workplace. I do need to tell them I need one other accommodation. And for that, it's not a big expense. And I just let them know that bringing on a quadriplegic will cost them $70. I use a rollerball mouse. I prefer it over a regular mouse. It means really a lot easier for me to be faster and manipulate the computer. And it's from Staples or Best Buy. It's an easy situation and an easy fit, and nobody has batted an eye ever in the many jobs that I've had over the years. Usually by this point, because I'm sharing and being open with them, I have them very casual, they're kind of laughing, and I explain, kind of with tongue in cheek that, and hey, I don't need a $1,000 ergonomic, office chair or the stand-up sit-down desk that costs $2,000. Hey, I bring my own chair and it's worth $10,000, so goody for me. Another aspect of the interview that I find is really good to, you can give them a feel for who you are. And that is to have some other stories, some talking points. The interview can, segue away from the standard questions and into, conversation. And I like to share some of facts that can be, little trivia for their day. And that is that based on research, the most frequently reported accommodations were changes in job duties and modified hours of work. It wasn't big ticket items. It was, change of work hours. So this means that a workplace has been doing this forever. And they're like, what do you mean? Moms and dads who start later or leave early to drop off the kids for daycare, dentist appointments, whatever it may be. Or even that the dolly, the shipping cart that's in the shipping department that always goes missing because everyone else is using it for carrying heavy or awkward items. These are standard practice, and they're accommodations that people in the workplace are always doing. Another tidbit around accommodations I share is that 57% of cases in Canada accommodations in the workplace for people with disabilities, 57% of them don't require accommodations at all. So no accommodation for 57% of the cases. And then 50 to 80% of the others that do require accommodation cost less than $500. So my rollerball, for example, easy fit, not expensive, and it's easy for their budget to fit into place. If there are more expensive items, I mentioned earlier, have some funding options that are out there that we do really have in Canada for an employer to source to bring you on. where I was also talking about in the last slide about sharing some personal stories on how there's been a benefit for bringing me into the workplace is I have been able to share and be open with my disability. That's who I am. And because of that, that's made my team and staff around me really comfortable. And particularly, I was at a very active workplace. Everyone rode bikes to work and did crazy mountain biking on the weekends. And our staff, one of our staff team building events, they wanted to go to a climbing gym. And I was like, wow, how are we going to do that? Well, my employer reached out, grabbed some ideas from people in the know, and little did I know, there we go. I'm hanging off the wall of a climbing gym, being included in the whole staff building event. And we all had a blast. And everyone felt great because I was included. And it's such a win for everyone to open up their minds and be enlightened about what we can do for each other. The other side of things that can really be a benefit, again, talking point, is the business case around hiring people with disabilities. What businesses don't always realize is that people with disabilities have a huge buying power. And you not only have your own buying power, in Canada, the number's crazy. It's $55 billion of spending ability for people with disabilities. And then you think about their friends and family and who they influence. This is a huge economic reach that a business doesn't want to miss, either in their employee base or the products and services that they can put out. So incorporating people with disabilities in their workplace, in their services, is a huge win. So again, as I was saying, these are little trivia points I can bring into conversation and really get people thinking. So closing out some thoughts. Your cover letter and all aspects of interviews are your opportunity to stand out from the rest. Employers have many resumes crossing their desk. Make it easy for them to see how you fit. Definitely do some interview preparation. Have those stories ready to go so that you can answer the standard interview questions and really highlight your skills. If you are disclosing, provide a positive perspective on your abilities, on how to do the job and how it contributes to the workplace. If you require accommodation, share what it is, so it can ideally be in place on your first day of work. As I say, set yourself up for success. No question, disclosing a disability is definitely a personal decision. It is a decision that is as personal as what goes on with your body and mind. It's often an ongoing process that evolves as we do personally, and as society hopefully evolves with us. I hope I've been able to share some tips and tricks with you today that will help you in your own job hunt. So thanks. Thanks everyone for being with me, and have a great day.